The Incident and Galactic Injustice. The year was 2487, and humanity had carved a respectable niche for itself in the sprawling, chaotic expanse of the galaxy. While not the most advanced species in the Galactic Union, humans had earned a reputation for resilience, ingenuity, and adaptability. Earth's representatives on the Galactic Council often played the role of mediators, using their unique perspective to resolve disputes between more advanced but less empathetic civilizations. Ambassador Elias Ford was one such human, renowned for his ability to negotiate with even the most obstinate of alien species. His presence on the Council had been instrumental in preventing countless interstellar conflicts. Yet, it was not his political prowess that made Elias a beloved figure back on Earth. It was his humanity, his unshakable love for his son, Caleb. Caleb, a precocious 10-year-old, often accompanied his father on diplomatic missions. He was a symbol of Earth's future, a reminder that humanity's dreams reach beyond the stars. His bright eyes and boundless curiosity melted the hearts of even the most rigid alien delegates. The boy's laughter had echoed in the hollow chambers of the Council, a sound that momentarily softened the sharp edges of galactic politics. But on one fateful day, that laughter was silenced forever. The trial. The Galactic Council's chambers were a masterpiece of alien architecture, a grand amphitheater that shimmered with holographic displays of the galaxy's stars. Delegates from hundreds of species filled the tiers, their forms as diverse as the planets they hailed from. In the center stood Ambassador Elias Ford, flanked by two towering Arachnar guards, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming under the chamber's light. Ambassador Ford, intoned Chief Magistrate Psylocke, a translucent amoebic being who spoke through a network of resonant vibrations. You stand accused of espionage against the Galactic Council and the theft of classified technology. How do you plead? Elias's voice was steady, though his fists clenched at his sides. Not guilty. These accusations are baseless and fabricated. I demand to see the evidence. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Accusations of such gravity were rare, especially against a delegate of Elias's stature. But the Council's reaction was far from sympathetic. Over the years, humanity's growing influence had sparked jealousy and resentment among certain factions, particularly from the Zorvax Dominion, whose delegate had been the loudest proponent of Elias's guilt. Evidence will be presented in due time, Exlox replied, his tone devoid of emotion. However, given the severity of the charges, the Council requires collateral to ensure your compliance. At this, Elias froze. His gaze darted to the gallery where Caleb sat, his small frame dwarfed by the Council's immense architecture. The boy's innocent smile faltered as the words registered. No, never. Never. No, Elias said firmly. Leave my son out of this. It is the will of the Council. Exalox said, his amorphous form undulating with finality. Before Elias could protest further, the guards moved to seize Caleb, arranging their grip for anything that was bigger, which means they would all. Father, Caleb's voice wavered as the guards dragged him from his seat. Elias surged forward, his voice echoing with fury. This is an outrage. He's just a child. Silence. Thylox's resonant tones filled the chamber, drowning out Elias's protests. The Council has spoken. AV, unthinkable. Caleb was placed in a containment field at the chamber's center, his terrified eyes meeting his father's across the divide. The boy's small hands pressed against the shimmering barrier, his lips forming the word Dad, though no sound escaped. Elias's heart pounded in his chest. He knew the Council's laws were harsh, but this was unprecedented. The delegates watched with cold detachment as Ilox raised a pseudopod-like appendage, slowly rising at one hand, grasping half a gravity well until he could manage to raise the pseudopod-like appendage and As collateral, the child shall remain in stasis until the trial concludes. Any attempt to interfere will result in immediate termination. You can't do this, Elias shouted. I'll surrender myself. Take me instead. Dialox ignored him, the barrier around Caleb shimmering ominously. Then, without warning, the stasis field flickered and collapsed. A surge of energy lashed out, striking the boy. Caleb's body convulsed as a scream tore from his throat, cut short as his small frame crumpled to the floor. The chamber fell into stunned silence. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as Elias stared at his son's lifeless body. Then, with a roar of anguish, he broke free from the guards and rushed to Caleb's side. Caleb! Caleb, wake up! Elias cradled the boy's limp form, his tears falling unchecked. Around him, the delegates remained motionless, their alien features unreadable. It was an accident, Zylox said, his voice devoid of remorse. The containment field malfunctioned. Elias's head snapped up, his grief replaced by a fury that burned brighter than a supernova. You murdered my son. Ambassador Ford, Eglox began, but Elias cut him off. You will pay for this. His voice was low and deadly, carrying a promise that sent a chill through the assembly. Humanity's breaking point. The news of Caleb's death spread like wildfire across the galaxy. On Earth, the reaction was immediate and visceral. Protests erupted in every major city, and the planet's unified government issued a statement condemning the Galactic Council's actions. For centuries, humanity had strived to prove its worth to the other species, enduring prejudice and condescension with patience and diplomacy. But this was a step too far. In a secret chamber, deep beneath the Martian surface, the High Command convened. This was not the elected government, but a shadow organization tasked with safeguarding humanity's most dangerous secrets. At their center was a holographic display of a fleet, not the sleek modern ships of Earth's current navy, but vessels of ancient design, their hulls etched with cryptic symbols that glowed faintly. The Council believes us weak, said Admiral Lin, her voice cold and sharp. It's time we remind them why humanity survived when so many others didn't. Activating the fleet is a last resort, cautioned Dr. Anya Patel, a historian who had spent her career studying the ancient ships. The risks are incalculable. These vessels are relics of a civilization far beyond our understanding. And yet, they're ours, Lin countered. They left them to us for a reason. If we don't use them now, when will we? After a tense debate, the decision was made. Humanity would no longer bow to the Galactic Council. They would unleash the ancient fleet and make the galaxy understand that Earth was not to be trifled with. Great. Yeah, so what does it mean? A father's vow. Back on Earth, Elias Ford stood before a crowd of billions. His grief-stricken face was broadcast to every corner of the planet and beyond. His voice, though heavy with sorrow, carried a steely resolve. My son was murdered by those who claimed to uphold justice, he began. For too long we have endured their scorn, their arrogance, their oppression. But no more. Today we stand united, not as victims, but as a force to be reckoned with. Cheers erupted from the crowd, a thunderous roar of solidarity. Across the galaxy, humanity's allies and adversaries alike watched in apprehension. They could feel the winds of change, a storm brewing on the horizon. Lyola Megan? Elias's gaze hardened as he concluded his speech. To the Galactic Council, I say this. You have awoken a sleeping giant, and you will regret it. As Earth's ancient fleet began to stir, the galaxy braced for what was to come. This was not just a fight for justice or revenge. It was a battle for humanity's place in the cosmos. And for better or worse, the galaxy would never be the same. Earth's hidden legacy The activation of the ancient fleet was not a decision made lightly. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, in a facility known only to the highest echelons of humanity's leadership, preparations were underway. The fleet had been unearthed nearly a century ago, buried beneath the sands of the Red Planet. At first, scientists believed the ships to be remnants of an extinct Martian civilization, but further analysis revealed a far more profound truth. These ships were not of Martian origin. They were older, much older, and their construction defied the limits of human comprehension. The alloy that made up their hulls was indestructible, impervious to the most advanced weapons Earth could muster. Their engines, dormant for millennia, emitted faint readings of an energy source unlike anything cataloged in human or alien science, and etched into their surfaces were glyphs that no linguist or cryptographer could decipher. For decades, humanity's brightest minds had studied the fleet, attempting to unravel its secrets. Some believed it was a gift left by a precursor civilization, a species so advanced that it had transcended physical existence. Others theorized that the ships were relics of an intergalactic war, abandoned after their creators achieved victory or annihilated one another. Regardless of their origin, one fact was indisputable. These ships were weapons of unimaginable power, and now they were waking up. The ancient fleet stirs. Admiral Lin stood on the bridge of the Sentinel, Earth's most advanced warship. Its sleek design and cutting-edge technology were dwarfed by the massive vessels that loomed in the underground hangar. The ancient fleet's ships were unlike anything in humanity's arsenal, their sheer size and alien geometry both awe-inspiring and terrifying. "Status report," Lin commanded. A young officer's voice crackled through the comms. "Admiral, we've managed to interface with the fleet's systems using the Aegis protocol. Energy levels are rising across all vessels. Estimated full activation in T-minus 2 hours." Lin's gaze shifted to the largest of the ships, a behemoth that dwarfed even Earth's orbital stations. Its hull was black as the void, its surface shifting subtly as though alive. They had nicknamed it Leviathan, and for good reason. If the fleet was a sword, Leviathan was its blade. "Census and the control systems?" Lin asked. "Drum your hunch and listen. Believe my luck. I'm there." Dramir Patel stepped forward, her tablet glowing with streams of data. "The ships appear to be semi-autonomous, but they've shown responsiveness to our commands. It's as if they're—" She hesitated, searching for the right word. "Listening." "Listening to what?" Lin pressed. "To us," Mattel replied. "Or more specifically, to something encoded in our DNA. These ships recognize humanity as their rightful stewards." The implications were staggering. Humanity had long wondered if it was alone in the universe. The ancient fleet suggested that Earth's ancestors had a connection to something far greater, a legacy that had remained hidden for millennia. Yeah, unveiling the past. As the fleet powered up, scientists and historians pored over the glyphs etched into their hulls. Among them was Dr. Elias Moore, a leading expert in xenoarchaeology. Moore had spent decades studying the glyphs, and now, with the ships active, he hoped to finally uncover their meaning. "The symbols aren't just decorative," Moore explained to Admiral Lin and Dr. Patel in a briefing room. "They're a language, a system of communication. When the ships powered up, they began emitting low-frequency signals that correspond to these glyphs. It's a message." "Can you translate it?" Lin asked. "Not entirely," Moore admitted. "But we've identified recurring patterns. One phrase keeps appearing: Children of the Forge. It's as if the ships are addressing us directly, acknowledging us as their heirs." Montel's eyes widened. If these ships were built by a precursor species, they may have seeded Earth with life, or at least influenced our development. We could be their successors. Lin frowned. Successors? Or experiments? We can't ignore the possibility that these ships were left here as part of some larger plan, one we might not understand. Regardless of their purpose, Moore said, we know one thing for certain. These ships are humanity's greatest asset. If the Galactic Council thinks they can intimidate us, they're in for a rude awakening. Awakens. 2 hours later, the fleet came to life. The hangar trembled as the ship's engines roared, their energy signatures spiking to levels that overwhelmed the facility's sensors. One by one, the vessels rose into the air, their massive forms defying gravity with an ease that seemed almost contemptuous. Admiral Lin watched from the Sentinel as the ancient fleet emerged from the underground hangar. The ships ascended into the Martian sky, their hulls shimmering with an otherworldly light. It was a sight that sent shivers down the spines of everyone who witnessed it. "Admiral," came the voice of Commander Hayes, Lin's second in command. "The fleet is forming up, awaiting your orders." Lin took a deep breath. This was a moment that would define humanity's future. "Relay to all ships, this is Admiral Lin. We are no longer the prey. We are the hunters. Set course for the Galactic Council's central station." The order was met with a chorus of acknowledgments. The fleet's engines flared, and the ship surged forward, leaving Mars behind. Humanity's retaliation had begun. The signal? As the fleet approached the Galactic Council's central station, a strange event occurred. The Leviathan, leading the formation, began emitting a deep, resonant hum. The sound reverberated through the fleet and then outward into space. "What's happening?" Lin demanded. Dr. Patel's voice came through the comms, tinged with urgency. "The Leviathan is broadcasting a signal. It's a warning." "A warning to whom?" Lin asked. "To the galaxy," Patel replied. "The message is clear. Do not challenge the children of the Forge." Lin's jaw tightened. "They'll know we're coming." "Good. Let them prepare." But the signal had unintended consequences. Across the galaxy, ancient ruins and dormant machines began to stir. On distant worlds, civilizations that had long forgotten their ties to the precursors suddenly found themselves connected to the awakening fleet. The Leviathan's warning was not just for the Galactic Council. It was for anyone who dared to oppose the heirs of the precursors. And the Council's reaction. On the Galactic Council's central station, chaos reigned. Delegates shouted over one another, their voices a cacophony of panic and outrage. The news of humanity's ancient fleet had reached them, and the Leviathan's signal only added to their fear. "We must strike first," bellowed the Zorvax delegate, his spined crest quivering with agitation. "Humanity has overstepped its bounds." "And risk annihilation?" countered the Sulvari representative, her luminous eyes narrowed. "We do not know the full extent of their capabilities." Chief Magistrate Xylox attempted to restore order, his resonant voice cutting through the din. "Enough. The Council will deliberate. This is not the time for rash decisions." But even Xylox could not hide his unease. The Galactic Council had always viewed humanity as an upstart species, ambitious, but ultimately controllable. The emergence of the ancient fleet shattered that illusion. Humanity was no longer a minor player in the galactic arena. It was a force to be reckoned with, and the Council knew it. A legacy of fire. As the ancient fleet hurtled toward its destination, humanity grappled with its newfound power. On Earth and its colonies, debates raged about the ethics of wielding such destructive force. Some saw the fleet as a means of securing humanity's future, while others feared it would turn them into the very tyrants they sought to oppose. Admiral Lin stood at the helm of the Sentinel, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead. She knew the path they had chosen was fraught with danger, but there was no turning back now. "For Caleb," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The ancient fleet surged onward, its ships blazing like beacons in the void. Humanity's legacy was written in fire, and the galaxy would soon bear witness to its might. Retaliation and the dawn of a new era. The ancient fleet hung in the void, a constellation of colossal vessels that dwarfed anything humanity had built. The Leviathan, its black hull shimmering with faint iridescence, stood at the vanguard. Around it, the other ships formed a precise and formidable formation, their engines humming with the power of an age-long past. Humanity's retaliation was no longer a question of if, but when. Admiral Lynn sat in the command chair aboard the Sentinel, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that showed the fleet's position relative to the Galactic Council's central station. It was an artificial world, the size of a small moon, bristling with defenses and surrounded by the combined fleets of countless species. "Admiral," said Commander Hayes, standing at her side, "we're within striking range, awaiting your orders." Lynn's gaze didn't waver. "Hold position for now. Let them see us. Let them feel the weight of what's coming." The Council's last stand? On the Galactic Council's central station, the mood was one of sheer panic. Delegates from every member species crowded the chambers, their voices rising in a cacophony of fear and anger. The Leviathan's signal had done more than announce humanity's arrival. It had awakened ancient fears, buried deep in the collective consciousness of the galaxy. Chief Magistrate Psylocke stood at the center of the chaos, his resonant voice attempting to restore order. "Esteemed delegates, I urge you to remain calm. Humanity's fleet may be ancient, but we have the combined might of the galaxy at our disposal." "You don't understand," hissed the Sobar representative, her bioluminescent skin flickering with distress. "Those ships are not merely weapons. They are relics of a war that nearly destroyed the stars themselves. To confront them is to invite annihilation." The Zorvax delegate, his spines quivering with agitation, slammed a clawed hand on the table. "Then what do you propose?" "Surrender. Humanity has defied us for too long. They must be crushed." Before Xylox could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber, her eyes wide with fear. "Chief Magistrate, the ancient fleet is halted just outside our defensive perimeter. They're waiting." "For what?" Xylox demanded. The aide hesitated. "For us to make the first move." The first strike?" On board the Sentinel, the atmosphere was tense. Every member of the crew knew the stakes. This was not just a battle for survival. It was a reckoning for centuries of oppression and injustice. "Admiral," Dr. Anya Patel said, her voice steady despite the tension. "We've detected a buildup of energy signatures around the Council station. Their fleets are powering weapons." Lynn nodded. "They're going to strike first." Just as we hoped. Moments later, the void lit up as the Council's fleets unleashed a barrage of energy beams, plasma bolts, and kinetic projectiles. The weapons streaked toward the ancient fleet, only to be absorbed by shimmering barriers of light that materialized around each vessel. "Date. Shields holding," reported Lieutenant Carter. "No damage sustained." Nin allowed herself a small smile. "Return fire. Target their flagship first." The Leviathan responded instantly. Its hull pulsed with energy, and a beam of light erupted from its forward section. The beam struck the Council's flagship, a massive dreadnought, and sliced through it as though it were made of paper. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash, scattering debris in all directions. The rest of the ancient fleet joined in, their weapons tearing through the Council's forces with precision and devastating efficiency. The once imposing armada was reduced to chaos, its ships falling one by one. The turning point? Inside the Council's central station, Xylox watched the battle unfold on a massive display screen. His composure, once unshakable, now cracked under the weight of the unfolding disaster. "This is impossible," he muttered. "Our fleets are the most advanced in the galaxy. How can they be losing?" The Solvar representative turned to him, her expression grim. "Because humanity's fleet is not bound by our understanding of technology. Those ships were built by a civilization that far surpassed us. We were fools to underestimate them." Lilacs clenched his fists. "We cannot allow this to be the end. Activate the station's defense grid. All of it." The station's defenses came to life, massive turrets and missile launchers unleashing a torrent of firepower. But the ancient fleet was prepared. The Leviathan deployed smaller, drone-like ships, each one acting as an extension of its will. These drones intercepted the station's attacks, dismantling its weapon systems with surgical precision. A message of defiance. As the battle raged, Admiral Lin addressed the Galactic Council directly. Her image appeared on screens throughout the station, her voice calm but resolute. Members of the Galactic Council, she began. For too long, humanity has suffered under your oppression. You deemed us unworthy, treated us as lesser beings, and murdered one of our children as a display of your power. Today we stand united, not just as a species, but as the rightful heirs to a legacy you cannot comprehend. Her words were met with silence, the weight of her message sinking in. We do not seek conquest or domination, Lin continued. But we will no longer bow to your tyranny. Surrender now, and you may yet have a place in the new order we will build. Resist, and you will face the full might of the ancient fleet. The broadcast ended, leaving the council in stunned silence. For the first time, they saw humanity not as an upstart species, but as an equal, perhaps even a superior. And here's the story behind the end of the battle. Despite their initial resistance, the council's forces were no match for the ancient fleet. Within hours, the battle was over. The central station, once a symbol of the council's power, was now surrounded by the victorious ships of humanity. Admiral Lin stood on the bridge of the Sentinel, watching as the Leviathan positioned itself above the station. Prepare a landing party, she ordered. We're going to secure their surrender. As humanity's soldiers descended onto the station, the council's delegates had no choice but to concede. Chief Magistrate Silox, his pride shattered, signed the terms of surrender under Lin's watchful eye. The dawn of a new era. With the council defeated, humanity emerged as a new power in the galaxy. But this victory was not without cost. The activation of the ancient fleet had awakened forces far beyond human comprehension. Across the galaxy, other ancient relics began to stir, their purpose unknown. Dr. Patel approached Admiral Lin as she stood on the observation deck of the Sentinel. The fleet, it's not just the weapon, Patel said. It's a key to something much larger. Lin nodded, her gaze fixed on the stars. Then we'd better be ready for whatever comes next. Humanity had won its first war against the galaxy, but its journey was far from over. The ancient fleet was a reminder of a legacy that demanded answers, and the stars held secrets that would shape the future of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. Wait.